Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Barnhart. It is so happy to see you again. Today we're going to be talking about an individual who has changed my life, who has changed history, who has changed humanity, and has brought it up to another level. We're going to be talking about the one, the only, Socrates.
Socrates is guilty of crime.
Socrates.
Who will decide the fate of this man, Socrates?
I'll never be able to do justice by Socrates with a short video. Instead, all I want to do is introduce you to the character. I want you to know by the end of this video at least who Socrates was and his legacy. Because it's important, man. A very famous ancient Greek, Socrates was born in 470 or 469 BC. He was executed in 399 BC. And he would go on to change the world in terms of philosophy and in terms of the way people looked at the world and looked and understood themselves and understood understandings. Oh my god, he was so deep. So the ancient Greeks were very superstitious people, just like most of the world was at the time. You know, doing all kinds of weird things to please the divine, sacrificing all kinds of animals and all kinds of ways and burning things and then reading those ashes and trying to predict the weather and trying to heal people with remedies that would sometimes make them sicker. Anyhow, it was very common. People didn't really know what things were going on, and it was just that's how things were back in the day. And in ancient Greece, you know, just like in many places in the world, but ancient Greece has a particular charm to it. They were starting to question the world in a more logical way, I guess you could say. They were trying to explain things not so much in a spiritual or a superstitious way, but more so in a, you know, cause, action, cause and effect, step by step, you know, this is this and that, and we're trying to associate things with other things. I don't know, they were trying to think of things differently. Yes, that's the point. They were trying to explain the world in terms of like elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. You know, this is what everything is made out of. You know, these were all ideas they were thinking about, and although it sounds childish and simple, this was revolutionary for the time. You know, they were trying to understand the world in a scientific sense. I mean, that comes a little later after Socrates, but Socrates was on its way there. Socrates was like a stepping stone, and I'll tell you why. Now, to understand Socrates, we have to first talk about philosophy, what philosophy is. We've talked about it before here on Barnhart, but like here's a refresher. Philosophy is quite simply the love of wisdom. You see, philosophy is two words, philosophia, two Greek words. Philo meaning love, and Sophia, if you can remember this next time you meet somebody who's named Sophie. Sophia means wisdom. So philosophia. So this whole idea of understanding the world in a wiser sense was the pursuit of wisdom, was the love of wisdom, and this was something that was becoming a trend in ancient Greece, and even today I hope maybe we'll make a comeback. So Socrates was definitely influenced by this trend, but he took it somewhere different. You see, instead of caring about what the clouds were made of or what the sun was or the stars and how the wind worked and all this and that, he took philosophy in a different direction, and he started asking questions about justice and truth and the good and how to live a happy life and what is temperance, and he started defining words in ways that people didn't care to define them, you know, really dissecting concepts, and this would be such a big game changer. He was a game changer, and it even put his life in danger. You see, unfortunately, Socrates, you know, because of his philosophical pursuits, was executed by his neighbors. Yeah, his neighbors executed it, and that's sad. That's a real tragedy. Classic, you know, this guy's changing things, he's changing the way we see the world, he's threatening our traditions and the current status quo, you know, and so they executed him just like they executed many great people throughout history. My god, humans, eh? Awful. Socrates, at his core, all he did was, you know, when you were a kid and you were playing the why game, you know, when you were asking why, and then somebody would give you an answer, and then you'd ask why again, and then somebody would give you an answer, and so on and so forth, to the point where the person that you're playing this game with, the person that had to answer all these unanswerable questions at one point, you know, was getting frustrated with you and told you to shut up. Well, execution was the Greeks' ways of telling Socrates to shut up. Oh my god, it's true, that's exactly it. Alright, so now that you're at least a little familiar with who Socrates is, let's talk about his legacy. So Socrates didn't actually write anything down. Socrates was the kind of guy who would just walk around and talk, and he actually thought that writing things down would corrupt knowledge in a way. And you know what, he's kind of right. But anyhow, so everything we know about Socrates comes from the people that were around Socrates when he was alive. Specifically Plato and Xenophon. There's a couple others, but those are the two top dogs when it comes to Socrates, being direct disciples of Socrates when they were young men. Socrates, oh Socrates. And you know, this is going to be worth the watch, right? This is very important to me at least, and it should be to you because, I mean, this guy matters. I don't want to talk too much about Plato, but we can't talk about Socrates without talking about Plato. You see, Plato wrote a lot. This is all the books. This is everything that Plato wrote right over here, I think. Yeah, something like that. I haven't read all of it. I haven't read most of it. But anyhow, so Plato's style of writing is dialogues. And so it's kind of like reading a conversation between a group of men. And from what I can tell, from what I know, Socrates is pretty much the main character in all of Plato's dialogues, or at least a majority of them. And so it's kind of hard to separate Socrates from Plato, because Plato inserts a lot of his ideas in Socrates' mouth, or uses Socrates as a character to explore his ideas. It makes sense because Plato's life was changed by Socrates, and Plato's life would go on to change Western philosophy. And I mean, there's a quote, it's like, all of Western philosophy is but footnotes off Plato, which is just trying to say that Plato is a big deal when it comes to philosophy, and Socrates was his direct teacher. Socrates is what sparked that flame inside of Plato's heart for wisdom. And Plato would go on to teach Aristotle, who would establish the foundations of science as we know it. I mean, these are big deals. These are big people here we're talking about. And Aristotle would go on to teach Alexander, who would go on to create the biggest empire the world had ever seen at the time. So that's a testament to Socrates, because that's his legacy right there. I mean, and he continues to influence people to this day throughout the last 2,400 years since he's gone. I mean, his words are still shaking us at our core, you know, like, this guy has so much to teach us. Socrates, I should say, is by no means a perfect man, but his flaws weren't so much a personal one as they were more of like a cultural one. You know, ancient Greece wasn't a perfect kind of culture and whatever. The good he did still stands. Socrates' method of questioning is really what made him special. He had a way of inquiring into subjects in such a way that he was really good at getting to the point, no matter who he was talking to. And the point was usually that nobody knew what they were talking about, including Socrates. Socrates always played the fool, and so he was always asking people, teach me what you know about justice, teach me what you know about friendship, and teach me what you know about love. You know, I want to know. Yeah, so their answers were never good enough for Socrates, and Socrates was really good at talking circles around people. He was such an eloquent man. He was so good at just oh man, he would make your brain fume. It was trying to keep up with his words, you know. And so that's why Plato's dialogues are so much fun to read. I really recommend you check them out. And because they're so old, you can find them all for free online, so no excuses. So Socrates' method of speaking is actually called the Socratic Method, and it's actually something lawyers learn and study because, you know, they want to be good at talking around people and getting their way with their words. And Socrates was by no means somebody who was just good with words, you know. The reason why he was so untouchable is because he used his eloquence to go after the truth, which is why lawyers these days saying they're using the Socratic Method, it's corrupted. You have to use the Socratic Method for the truth, you know, anyhow. You can't just use it to get your way, at least not every day. Cicero, the famous Roman politician who was alive during the times of Julius Caesar, once said about Socrates, Socrates was the first to call philosophy down from the heavens and to place it in the cities, and even to introduce it into homes and compel it to inquire about life and standards and goods and evils. In other words, back in the day, if you wanted to study philosophy or any kind of knowledge, you had to have money, you had to be of noble class, you know, those doors were closed to most of the people. Socrates, however, wasn't afraid to talk to slaves, wasn't afraid to talk to anybody in the streets, you know, man, woman, or child, about philosophy and picking their brains, you know. Socrates said that the trick to teaching people is not pouring a bunch of knowledge like you're pouring water into another jug. Instead, you want to kindle a flame. You want to kindle a flame of curiosity. Yeah, see, man, this guy was on a whole nother level. There have been many, many wise individuals throughout history. There have been many people who have pushed the envelope of understanding a little further, and some push it more than others. You can think of human knowledge as a kind of pond, and some people decide to throw rocks inside this pond, shaking things up and trying to see what's underwater and whatever. And Socrates threw one hell of a big rock inside this pond, so much so that it's still shaking the pond to this day, but the waves are so old that we don't even know it's Socrates anymore. And that is Socrates. Anyhow, there's no way that I'll be able to introduce such a character like Socrates in one video, like I said. I'm hoping that at least now you have a better understanding of who the guy is, you have an appreciation of who he was, and maybe you're even more curious about who he was. If that's the case, I recommend you go read Plato's Charmides or the Apology, and those should blow your mind. You're welcome. Thank you so much for watching me today. Thank you so much for letting me rant about Socrates. I mean, I like being able to talk about whatever I like with you guys, and this is definitely something I like. I love this stuff, and I hope you like it too, you know, whatever. Peace out. I hope you got life figured out.
Pythian prophetess, who speaks with the tongue of Apollo. Is any man wiser than Socrates? Priestess,
No man is wiser than Socrates. No man is wiser than Socrates. No man is wiser than Socrates.